Welcome everybody, my name is Terry for Linux Academy, and today, as a special add-on to our LAMP stack tutorials, we will be covering how to host multiple websites on a single system using vhosts. So let's get started. To save a little time, we've already created an Ubuntu Linux Academy server and installed Apache 2. We'll check right now to make sure that Apache is running on our Ubuntu system. Just doing a simple PS and then a telnet on localhost port 80, which is our default HTTP. We can see that it is running, and we do get an Apache response. So there are some differences between Ubuntu and CentOS or RPM Red Hat based systems that you'll see here. The first one is we go to etc Apache 2, whereas in CentOS, as you'll see, it'll be HTTPD. But we have two sites. We have two directories that contain the configuration files for our vhosts. On Ubuntu, we have sites available, which is a list of all the configurations that the system is configured to listen for, but are not necessarily active. So we're just going to copy the default and create two sites. We're going to create site 1, site 2, make it real simple. So this is a very basic vhost configuration. We're not going to worry about any redirects or specialized logging here, but what we do need to add is we do need to assign a server name. Now the server name here is going to be the fully qualified domain name that our server, this vhost, is going to listen for. In this case, we're going to call it site1.linuxacademy.com. You may also set a server alias here so that if you have multiple domains that you want this to listen on, you can put a server alias. In this case, we'll just add test.site1.linuxacademy.com. The default document root is var www on an Ubuntu system, but we're going to add var www site1 as the document root for this particular site. We need to change the directory configuration from var www to site1 down here. And once that's done, we'll go ahead and save our file. We'll copy, to save ourselves some typing, we'll copy site 1 to site 2, and then go in and change the references from site 1 to site 2 in that configuration file. So here our server name will be site2.linuxacademy.com, and our alias will be testsite2.linuxacademy.com. And don't forget, we need to change our document root and our directory reference from site 1 to site 2. Then save our file. And you'll remember that the default directory for Apache on Ubuntu systems is var www, so we need to go create these site directories that we're referencing. And then we're going to cheat and grab the index file and make a quick change so that we can differentiate them. So we've created site 1 and site 2. Let's change over to site 1's directory. And let's grab the index file from the subdirectory here. Once I'm sudo, of course. And then we're going to edit it and simply add some text that lets us know that we are in the right place. Site 1. This is going to be an awesome website. I can't wait to launch Site 1. Only to be eclipsed by the wondrousness that is Site 2. So here, let's go ahead and add our text for Site 2. Now once we've created this, we have the path, we have a default index. We need to go activate the changes. Since the sites are now available, they're not actually enabled. So if you go to sites enabled, you'll see that the only site that's currently enabled is the default, which is the generic itworks directory that we copied to our other sites directory. So in this case, we just change the sites available. We run a special script that comes with all Debian versions called A2EN site, and that means available to enabled site, site 1, And you can run this for as many sites as you have configuration files without reloading Apache until you're ready. Once you do that, we do need to reload Apache so that it reads in these configuration files. And in Ubuntu, we need to restart as Apache 2. And then we can open up a local browser. So we'll see our default site, which is at localhost. It works, yay! Now we're going to go to site1.linuxacademy.com, which should have our custom text. There it is, site1. And finally, we will go to site2.linuxacademy.com, and we will again see our customized text. Site 2. So as we mentioned, there are some differences between Ubuntu and RPM-based distributions like CentOS. However, one of the main advantages is there are no differences inside the vhosts themselves. So if we go over to a previously spun up Linux Academy CentOS distribution and log in, switch over to root, and change to, in this case, you'll notice it's not Apache, it's etc httpd. There's no sites available or sites enabled. Instead, there's a vhost.d directory that we create, and the configuration files will go here. This vhost.d directory does not exist by default. I find that having a separate directory for vhosts is better than leaving it in the HTTP root or adding it to the general configuration for CentOS, which you can do. But in this case, we created a directory called vhost.d. We're going to drop back over to our Ubuntu site, and then we're going to copy our site configuration files over to our home directory, log back into CentOS, and this is just demonstrating that we're not going to make any changes on the vhosts that we already set up in Ubuntu. We've just copied them over to our CentOS system. So become root, we're going to go back over to HTTPD. And now we're going to take a look at our configuration file. And the reason we're going to take a look at our configuration file is I mentioned that we created a vhost.d directory. So in order to include the configurations, you need to tell Apache on CentOS where your vhost configuration files are if they're not in the root. By default, it'll look in the root pathway. So in this case, we added a directive that says include vhost.d anything star.conf. So now when we go over to vhost.d, we're going to copy from our home directory the site1 and site2 configuration files and name them site1.conf, site2.conf. You don't have to name them .conf. I find that in Ubuntu it just makes things easier since there's no differentiation between available and enabled. So we've now copied them as is, and we're going to make no further changes to these files at all. You'll see that it exists the same way that it did over in Ubuntu, site1, the same directory, etc. So speaking of directories, var www.html is the default directory for CentOS, so we need to create site1 and site2 in var www, since that's what we reference. So we're going to go over to site1, and real quick, as fast as I can type anyway, we're going to create an index file. And we're going to create one from scratch so that we know that we are visiting the site as configured on this system. So the most basic of HTML files, we're going to say site1 on CentOS and simply indicate this is site1 and that we haven't made any configuration changes to the vhost files from Ubuntu. And again, this will just help us to visualize that this is running on a different system. We have to do the same thing for site2, but we'll save ourselves some typing and we'll simply copy the site1 file and then change site1 references to site2. So here we go into our index file. Let's change site1 to site2 and change the 1 reference to 2 here as well. Now that we've saved that file, we do need to reload Apache, just as we did in Ubuntu. And now we'll open up a browser. Oops, sorry about that. And we'll visit site1.linuxacademy.com. And there we see site1 on CentOS. This is site1 on CentOS. No configuration changes made from Ubuntu. And site2 on CentOS. This is site2. No configuration changes made from Ubuntu. So the main differences between Ubuntu and CentOS or RPM-based distributions is that one refers to Apache 2 for the service, the other refers to HTTP. Ubuntu has a sites enabled, sites available directory, and on CentOS we created a vhost.d and modified the configuration. That covers how to host multiple websites on the same system using different vhosts. My name is Terry for Linux Academy, brought to you by Pinehead TV.